had finished in the last class about the paradigm shift, about Thomas Kuhn. Now we move from there to how scientists, technologists, and historians of science work. When we talk about scientists, in case you meet a scientist, you would always see them talking about the progress. When Dr. Abdul Kalam was invited to one of our institute's convocations, he already had a vision 2020. Whenever you would talk to Dr. Abdul Kalam, he would talk about that. So in that moment also, he spoke about how India will progress by 2020. The first characteristic of a scientist or technologist, you will see that they focus on the progress. What is going to happen in future? How human beings will solve problem of climate change or pollution, how human beings will solve the problem of disease. Cancer is there, HIV, AIDS is there, and in today's scenario, coronavirus is there. By the beginning of 2021, in breaking the code and creating the vaccine for people, the outlook of scientists is towards progress. First characteristic of scientists is that they talk about progress, and in their opposition, the historians of science and technology do is they talk about the failures. Historians of science and technology later on started finding problems with the scientific progress. In short, what historians of science do, focus on or point out the failures. They point out where the problem lies. They try to criticize the progress. It's not that criticism is negative. Criticism is never negative. If a historian of science and technology, by taking into account the destruction which was caused by the atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, if a historian of science and technology criticizes atomic bomb, then that person is not doing a bad job. That person is trying to bring the humane aspect of science and technology. That person is trying to pinpoint that what is the use of science if it is not in the betterment of the people. Next is they also focus on things which did not work. So for instance, we still don't have any cure for cancer. We don't have cure for HIV AIDS virus. And what also has not worked, this balance between industrial progress and the atmosphere or the nature. Another function of historian of science and technology is that they try to humanize science and the scientists. We've already spoken through George Sarton's case that how humanity was getting detached from science and technology. So George Sarton said that it was some sort of a dehumanization of science and technology. What historians of science and technology try to do is they try to humanize them. They try to see science as well as scientists in human terms. It has many implications. First implication is they see them just like themselves, not as extraordinary beings who have come from above. They are just like us. They are just like ordinary people. Second implication of this point is they might also be having some biases for something which they like and against something which they don't like. This is a human tendency, which means if a scientist has a particular idea or let's say ideology, works under a certain idea, then the entire output of that scientist would be in that direction. So that is also some sort of a fear or a point which historians of science and technology criticize. So this bias aspect, the second implication of this point, is not at all good for the progress of science and technology. Now let us move in another direction. So that's why now from the introductory part we jump to modern science. First place that we see about modern science is given to Italy. It's also known as Renaissance. That period is marked by development in art, literature, science, technology. The first point about modern science that we get to see is that in Italy, some sort of a demand was created for two types of engineers. First was civil and second was military engineer. And this demand did not come automatically. This demand also did not come because some sort of a need was there. For instance, demand for a vaccine in our time for coronaviruses, but it was a political demand. These demands were about solving some practical problems. This political demand could be very personal. Maybe a politician, a king or a queen wanted something great to be created. You will see those huge structures. You would see those roads which the Italian people built. Maybe somebody wants to create a legacy for renown. A king or a queen, a politician or a powerful person wants himself or herself to be remembered. That's why he or she wants something unique to be built in his or her name. So this demand was trying to sort out some practical problems. It emanated from the personal demand and then started affecting the rest of the people in Italy. If there were some practical problems, in order to meet those demands, you see over here, the greatest engineer is Leonardo da Vinci. He not only created big structures, like one design is given over here, he created designs for flying objects. He created great paintings. Because of those political demands, these engineers faced some sort of practical problems, and then they tried to find some practical solutions. Now, let us see what other things were happening. What are the markers of the modern world? Somebody called Ptolemy. In Ptolemy's system, at that point in time, the whole world was consisted of only 3 continents. Foremost was Europe, second was Africa, third was Asia. In 1507, Martin Waldseemüller, he creates this map of the new world. So this is the second characteristic. That world then moved beyond Ptolemy. The idea of the whole world in 15th, 16th, 17th centuries was very limited. For them, world consisted of only 3 continents: Europe, Africa, and Asia. Then this idea is broken by Martin Waldseemüller in 1507. He creates this map of the new world. New world is the Americas, 2 continents. North America, in which USA and Canada are there, and South America, in which several countries are there. So this was also discovered in a sense through cartography, which means map making. These discoveries then led to the navigation system. Once this map was created, then people became curious, and people like Columbus then discovered Americas actually. The point over here is this navigation science which came into being is a marker of the modern science. Now, another aspect in modern science we see is this question of God and man vis-a-vis science and nature. What is the equation in Christianity and in our belief system also? That it's the God who has created man, which means in Christianity, in European system, they believe that the God created or made man in his own image. That is, just as God is there, same is man, which means man is creator and man is also rational. So 2 qualities were attached regarding man. One was creation, that man has ability to create, and second was rationality, that man could reason. Man is reasonable. Why man is creator? Because we are like gods, and just like God is reasonable, man is also reasonable. How does man create? Man creates when God is imitated. That is, just like God was creating worlds, space, and stars, moons, and nature and everything. Similarly, if man will imitate God's creation, then man would also be creating. Now question arises, how to create? Because to create something, it was believed by those people, to create something, you need to know nature's secret. Then we come to the next aspect, nature and man. So how do you know secrets of nature? When you try to force the nature. So how you force the nature? For instance, in our time, you will see the mining. So what are we trying to do? Something which is part of nature, whether it is coal or other minerals, we force nature, we dig up nature, and then we take away those natural resources. So this is how man starts to force nature. When you force nature, it was believed by them, then you get to know the secrets of nature. And then what is the result? The result is many advantages like eternal life, freedom from needs and disease. So this was their belief. Based on all these elements, now let us see what is the idea of modern science that we get to see, that science and technology are the tools. This is the first part of the idea of modern science, that science and technology are the tools, and these tools can be used. If you know the definition of a tool, then you will see that a tool is used to do a particular work, and to create some sort of an advantage to you. So science and technologies are viewed as tools, and when you use these tools, then you can bend nature, then you can exploit nature, then you can take away so many things which are in nature. This is the modern idea of science, that you can manipulate nature. Now, if you were historians of science and technology, then you would simply oppose this idea, because we have seen wherever man has mindlessly exploited nature without thinking about the larger concern of human beings, over there is a defeat. But this idea cannot be denied. This idea was created by the Western world, which, as a matter of fact, we also borrow for our own progress. So this idea is still valid. Valid in the sense, as historians of science and technology, you should criticize this idea so that larger good can be preserved. Let us go towards another aspect in history of science and technology. That aspect is the scientific revolution. Is based on skepticism. This doubt element in any human endeavor, which ultimately leads to knowledge. Now over here what you see is two types of systems. On the left, a universe which was conceived by Ptolemy. On the right hand you see Copernicus cosmology. They are also called, left one, as geocentric system or geocentric universe and heliocentric universe. Geocentric is in which Earth is the center of the universe and moon, planets and stars, etc., they all orbit around it. It was originally Aristotle's idea, but it was popularized or attributed to Ptolemy. And the second idea is heliocentric universe, which means that the sun is the center of the universe and rest of the planets roam around it. This was brought by Copernicus. So what we understand by these two systems is, before Copernicus, geocentric system was prevalent. This was a system which was believed by everybody. Then heliocentric system is introduced. So what happens is, it creates that paradigm shift. The moment you say that the center of the universe is not Earth, it's the sun, it topples over the entire system. It was a time of rapid change in ideas regarding science and technology. So for instance, Copernicus's heliocentric system says sun is at the center. Then there was another person called Tycho Brahe. He said Earth is motionless. All these ideas were accepted up to a certain extent and then rejected. Then comes Galileo Galilei. Galileo invents telescope, which is a tool. Through telescope, he does all these discoveries, that there are mountains on the moon. Nobody believed that there was mountain on the moon. There are several satellites of Jupiter. He also finds that there are some spots on the sun, and he also finds that the Milky Way is composed of countless stars. Then comes somebody called Johann Kepler. So what Johann Kepler tells us is that there are magnetic forces which are emanated by the sun, and these magnetic forces are those forces which push the planets in orbit. Because people were asking questions. How is it possible that these planets are roaming around? How is it possible that if Earth is rotating on its axis, we don't fall off? And people were trying to answer those. Then comes Isaac Newton. Isaac Newton also brings another tool. Just like the tool telescope, there is another tool called calculus. Not only he, but somebody called Gottfried Leibniz. He also invents calculus. Gravity is invented, but Isaac Newton is marked by that personal belief. He believed in God. So he brings in the idea that gravity is there, but the gravity is a divine action. He also brings into focus laws of motion and also tells that these laws of motion, gravity, controls the universe. Universe is based on these two forces, these laws of motion and gravity, but with the help of the God. And then he also says that this system will collapse naturally because of the gravity itself. But there is only one element which can restart the solar system, and that entity is God. So when we see Newton's example, what we come to know is that Newton falls for the personal belief of the idea of God. All these ideas were contesting with each other, and this is the kind of time in which we ultimately say scientific revolution was happening. But this scientific revolution's base was skepticism. If there was geocentric world, somebody doubted it, like Copernicus, and brings out another idea of heliocentric system. Scientific revolution is based on primarily skepticism, this tendency to doubt, this tendency to question, because these were also questioning each other. That's the idea of scientific revolution.